Hey Wade, how you doing, buddy?
Life is good, Rob.
And we are back for a second episode of season two, and we are about to knock everyone's socks off with who we have available today. It is with great honor, and I'm sending him the link so that he can share it. Mr. Visconti, if you could hear me, it is now in your inbox. It's with great honor that we are joined today by a Thelemite, magician, author, and not to mention a musician who will be sharing today his latest book about Aliester Crowley and the magic behind it. Without further ado, welcome to the show, to Magic.tv, Mr. Marco Visconti. Hello, Marco.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for
Good
having me.
morning.
Good
All
morning, good
right. Welcome
afternoon,
to
good evening.
Magic.tv, Marco. And, congratulations on your new book. We're all eager to dive into it. So tell us about you, Marco. Tell us about what got you started, what inspired you to write your book, and what were some of your original, how do I say, motivations behind choosing that as a topic. And tell us about your own, how you got into the occult. Just tell us all about you.
Well, that's going to be a long story. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. I got into magic, the occult, the esoteric since, in my early teenage years, really. Pretty much, if I have to pinpoint like a date or time on the calendar, it really is the summer of 1990. And I was 12 of the time. So relatively very young. And I was already interested in mythology. I grew up in Rome, Italy. Strangely enough, I never really cared about Roman or Greek mythology, which is pretty much what makes the background of my own culture. But I was very keen on Egyptian mythology and Celtic mythology. So I was looking away. I was looking away from my own cultural background. Long story short, that summer, a lot of things were happening in my life. We had death in the family. It was a lot of turmoil, and by complete chance, I discover, in a comic book of all places, the name of Aliester Crowley, and it immediately resonated with me because I was very captivated by this idea of the most wickedest man in the world. As I already said, I was 12, but I was already on the path to become a goth and a metalhead. So to hear that somebody was the wickedest man in the world kind of resonated with me as a young boy, and that's it. Like pretty much, I started looking around whatever else I could find to read, and at the time in Rome, Italy, 1990. There's a match, right? The only thing that we had available was an Italian translation of the 1972 edition of Liber ABA, Magic in Theory and Practice, the one that was edited by Kenneth Grant and John Simons. Interesting enough, though, it was a very strange translation because in time I came to understand that whoever translated it, and I don't have the book with me, so I don't remember. Whoever did, they did their best. But it was pretty clear that they didn't really maybe know magic or understand what they were translating because in time when I went to to fully read the original, I realized that huge chunks were missing, right? Or things were mistranslated. And that was the only thing I had for the longest time about Crowley. Still, I stuck with it, and I started tentatively doing some of the practices in the book, mostly realizing that Crowley was putting a lot of emphasis on what he understood to be yoga. So the need for the aspiring magician to first and foremost bring it all back to the body. So an embodied practice, an embodied practice that would start, with posture, would start with breathing, would start with visualization, and then move on to build up the elemental weapons, the temple, the altar, etc., etc. And then when we got to Magic in Theory and Practice proper, the book 3 of Libre ABA, I was like, okay, I don't understand this. Like I could not make sense of everything that Telema was telling me, because again, Crowley was speaking about certain things that would only be known by members of OTO or AA. So it was like, well, what are those? And by this time, some years have passed, and I'm 18. and I'm start looking, do this OTO or AA even exist anymore? And then I did find them even in Rome, in Italy. I didn't like the people in OTO at the time at all, so I just put them on a side for a while, and I found what we would call today a lineage of the AA in Rome, and I went with it, and I've been with it ever since. Over the years, as the year passed, and we're in the 2000s now, I start working with another Italian magician called Roberto Miliusi. He was translating at the time. He did a fantastic job at translating and publishing all of Austin Osman's pair. And he was also connected with Kenneth Grant and Michael Berthiaud. So we start translating Kenneth Grant and Michael Berthiaud in Italian. I personally did Michael Berthiaud, and I did help with Against the Light and The Stellar Load and a bunch of others from Kenneth Grant. Some Cults of the Shadows as well. But the point is that I did translate Lucky Udo, which is the first chapter. It can be seen as a standalone publication from Michael Berthiaud. Then we go and visit Berthiaud in Chicago in 2004, and I start studying with him directly. And that would take all the 2000s pretty much for me. Long story short, I'm trying to condense everything. As you can imagine, a lot of things goes down, a lot of personal experiences.
Tell us your whole life in 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Almost there. We are at the 2010s now. To the early 2010s, another upheaval in my life. And so I go back looking for a more present community, a brotherhood, if we want. Some very good friends of mine back in Rome that were also interested in magic and the esoteric and practicing magicians come to me and say, hey, give the OTO a chance. I mean, it's better now. And it was better compared to what I originally found in Rome in the late 90s. And so I joined. And then I moved to London, where I live right now. That was 10 years ago. And I joined Ameth Lodge here and quickly become treasurer of the lodge. And I remain in OTO as a very vocal supporter of OTO till I'm not anymore again, because something happens in the summer of 2017, which all of you might remember, in Charlottesville, there in the United States. There's something called Unite the Right rally. A lot of OTO members were part of that rally. And people at the very top of the OTO try to downplay it. I'm very strongly anti-fascist. I cannot tolerate fascism. It's me. It's who I am. And so I was like, yeah, that's not me anymore. I try to make changes from inside OTO. I realize it would not work, and so I leave. But I leave with a bang, as I used to do, because I published a series of articles that kind of a bit critical of the current leadership of OTO. And so, I start my own path, right? Like at that point, I really started to become very disillusioned with the idea of orders, of hierarchical structures, even if I really believed in it for the longest time. And so, instead of saying, okay, like I carry on my AA lineage, I just say, let's try a complete different approach, right? Let's see if we can get this magic thing to the public, to the widest possible group of people, and maybe a lot of younger people that are really they really don't want to join anything, or even a lot of people that have always been wary of joining anything, because as I was writing in my articles, and I still believe hierarchical groups tend to devolve into nepotism and wars, right? So what I found out here in London and online, I always had quite a strong online presence because I've been a musician for most of my life, and so I already knew how to use social media, how to have a presence on those environments, and so I put together an online community. And at first, there was few people, but very, very committed. And that's when I started writing what would become my book. And then, of course, we have the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown years. And, I think in time, we will look back at the years we just passed. And it doesn't matter if you believe it happened or not. I mean, I'm not going to debate that. But it's definitely true that it left almost like a psychic scar on our collective. And so what I noticed is that there was a way for people to cope with this experience that was happening to them, and that was magic, right? Like the very basic practices of magic, which is really like, as I was saying at the beginning of Libre ABA, is going back to an embodied practice, going back to learn how to breathe, going back to learn how to stand, going back to just learn how to silence the chaos around you and just go back to your center. And we had a lot of chaos around us for the last few years. So that's something that started to really resonate with a lot of people.
Especially the part about relearning how to breathe, to do like breathing techniques when you're dealing with a global airborne virus, and everyone's told you got to wear a mask, you have to stay away from each other, don't breathe, don't cough, and then you have to be like, okay, now you're home, now take your deep, fill your lungs all the way to the top, and you have this psychological resistance to it. Because you spend all day not breathing.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I realized it made a big difference, because like you were saying, we were all scared of breathing. We were all scared of getting infected. I mean, I had the COVID twice, and the first time it was really, really bad. So I was thinking, okay, how do you convey this message that at the end of the day, if you do not learn how to regulate your breathing, which is prana, this magical essence that connects all of us, right? How do you convey the idea that you still have to do it? Well, Crowley wrote plenty of it, and of course, Crowley's understanding of yoga was, by today's standards, we can say it was faulty. Of course, like he had little books available. He had little ability to study with teachers. Even if of course, as you all know, he studied with Alan Bennett, who went to become the first British person to become a Buddhist monk. So he had good connections. But when we look at the yoga that we find in Crowley, it's very different from what you can learn and you can practice as a yogi today. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, the community grows quite exponentially. In fact, at the very height of the coronavirus pandemic, the lockdowns, we had almost 300 people there. It was very big, and of course, time passes. The world reopens, thankfully. The online community mellows down, right? A lot of people have less time to spend online, and that's when I was convinced by, in fact, one of my students say, "Hey, you wrote so much over the last 3 years and a half at the time. Why don't you spend some time to edit everything down and make it into a book?" I'm not a writer, right? I even, in the introduction of my book, I even say I don't like to write, especially I don't like to write about magic, because I think magic is something that you have to experience, you have to do. As Telemites, one of our main aphorisms is "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," and it starts with do. You gotta do it, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you don't do it, you can think about it, you can write about it, you can pontificate about it. There's a lot of that going on online, as we all know. I suppose.
Yeah.
But you have to set some time to just do the practice, and so I sit down and I decided to bite my tongue and write a book, and this is it. This is the only copy I have right so far. The Aliester Crowley Manual, Thelemic Magic for Modern Times, comes out in 2 weeks on Valentine's Day, or Lupercalia, if you want to be a little bit Roman about it and Crowleyan about it. It's a no-nonsense manual, right? It's something that I try to put down all those lessons, and those are really the basics of what was taught to me as I was starting. Again, learning how to sit still and to tune yourself with the rest of the universe, and then a series of practices that it seems to me a lot of people in the recent years have wrote about it, or maybe even made YouTube videos or TikTok videos about it, like the pentagrams and the hexagram rituals that come from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. But very few people ever stop and try to understand, okay, what is that I'm actually doing? What are these elements? Can these elements be found in ourselves? What are these planetary influences? Is just something that is connected with astrology and horoscopes, or there's something deeper in it? Of course, astrology, it is astrology, but it's much deeper than horoscopes, right? And from there, after the person, whoever reads this book, which is structured as a manual, at the end of every chapter there is homework for you to do, and you can stay with each chapter around from 2-3 weeks to a month. Some are suggested to stay longer with it. Some chapters are shorter, but then after all of that, I introduced dilemma. And I introduced dilemma by introducing the idea of eonics, and how these eons change. What are eons? Everybody speaks of the new eon, but what is an eon? Is it a period of time, or it is almost like a new operating system that is installed into our reality? Well, of course, it's both, right? But you have to make a little bit of difference and try to understand it. And then, of course, I introduced the dramatis personae of dilemma, Nuit, Kuit, or Prakrat. Then I also go on discussing a little bit about lesser known ones like Pan or Ivas, but lesser known not for us Thelemites, but a lot of people that maybe just hear about Crowley never really understand or read about Ivas. Of course, Babylon, everybody's favorite. I make the point that I really don't think that Babylon is only a feminist icon, and that will give, I'm pretty sure people will not like that, even if she's also that, right? And then there's the last chapters are about me trying to describe the rituals of Dilemma proper. Describe because we didn't get the green light to print them. Some of you will know that a lot of Aliester Crowley's rituals are under copyright. Not all of them anymore, and the holders of the copyright, the OTO, doesn't really play well with others. I mean, at least has been my experience as an ex-OTO person. And so, whenever my publisher Watkins published Dr. Stephen Skinner's edition of Liber ABA, they had a lot of resistance, at least in the United States market. Outside the United States, it's pretty much free for all. But since they publish worldwide, when we agreed on doing this book, was like, yeah, you can speak about Crowley only if you never quote Crowley. I was like, oh, that's gonna be interesting. But weird. I think I managed to do it, right?
Well, I have a question for you, Marco, about the book. Would it be safe to say that The Magic of Aliester Crowley is a beginner's manual to the work of Aliester Crowley? Any beginner can pick up the book and say, wow, I heard about this guy, I want to learn about his practices. Would you say that about your book?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is not. I didn't write this book for Thelemites. In fact, I don't think Thelemites should read it, because if you're a Thelemite and you still need my book, maybe you should read something else instead.
A lot of Crowley is very opaque, because at the time that he was writing, there were a lot of people. I mean, he was written for people that are already in fraternal orders, that are in the Masons and the Knights of the Golden Eagle, et cetera, that they're in, Scottish Rite or York Rite. So it's already for people who have this structure in mind. So when they say, okay, well, we're going to have the Cancellarius come up and do this, and you're like, wait a minute, where the hell do I get a Cancellarius?
Yeah, exactly.
What is that?
But I mean,
and so it does need to be translated into modern times.
That's precisely was my aim, right? If you remember in the introduction of Liber ABA, Crowley does go and say, and I'm not quoting verbatim, but goes and say oh, this book is for everyone, the pugilist, the banker, and this and this and that. And then it just doesn't care about that anymore. He goes into, from time to time, into deep philosophy, because he was very good at that, right? And then, as you correctly said, he speaks of people that already were into that mindset. People were already considering what it's like to be in a fraternal order. A lot of Dilemma is expounded in clear terms only in the rituals of the OTO, nowhere else, right? There is, I don't know how much we're going to spoil it today, maybe not much. But the point is that in the 6th degree of OTO, it's where you find an equivalence between certain god names. Right, in the Book of the Law, it is written that Nuit as a secret name. Well, that secret name is told you in the 6th degree of OTO. But if you never go into the 6th degree of OTO, which, by the way, I never reached officially, but then something else happened when I left. You will never know, or maybe you will be thinking, well, maybe that person, that god is the same god, or maybe, I don't know. Crowley really expected people, Thelemites, to, okay, you start with magic. That's it was his introduction according to him, but then you join the OTO and you go through all the degrees, in fact, right? And then maybe you join the AA, and then you have a deeper understanding of how magic becomes mysticism, how you go into that, how do you put yourself through the flames of the Athanor in order to be reborn alchemically. But the thing is, it's very difficult for people to maybe even have the patience of that. And maybe we could discuss a little bit about, we live in a very fast and lazy culture. But also, I also noticed that there's a lot of people that actually have the inclination and the will to learn, but then maybe they don't get the chance to do it because you will never get to 6th degree OTO unless you're a friend with other people. And there's a lot of nepotism in the OTO that I experience. Other people will have different experiences, of course, but that was my own.
Well, a lot of the degrees beyond the Man of Earth, a lot of the degrees are purely administrative. They're just variations on the 2nd degree, but then you get into like the 5th and 6th and all that, and that's when you expected to have a job within the order. So you have to have allies and friends and connections.
You know what? I really disagree with that in the sense that I had, here in the UK, I had all the good connections, and then at some point I decided that I was not happy with James Wasserman being friends with fascists, and then my advancement was put on hold all of a sudden. It's I really don't think that the OTO is run the way it should be run, and I think that really creates creates a problem for people that maybe wanted to experience the dilemma as Crowley devised it. But again, I know that the experience of any fraternal order will be different according to who you get to know and what happens, right? Also, this is possibly why fraternal orders maybe don't really work anymore, because people talk much more freely in this day and age. We're having this chat here on live stream about things that would be considered sub rosa or under oath in previous times, right? I don't know if maybe I've been particularly unlucky with my connections, but I was when I was a member of OTO, the diktat was like, no social media, do not, you cannot have any. And it's like, how do you enforce that anymore? You can't, right? It's so difficult, and I think that it creates like blockages for people that might want to experience the entirety of it. Anyway, there's ways around.
Wait, before I forget, I have a very good question I wanted to ask you about you as an individual. How has your practices as a Thelemite and a magician affected your career as a musician? Has there any been? It's like, are some of your songs inspired by magic, or has it invoked? Have you used it as a form of invocation? Please share to us about your music and if it's affected your magic and vice versa in any way.
I always consciously decided not to write overtly about magic, right? Because my music career spanned between 2000 and 2015, 16, something like that. Around that time, I decided that I was getting too old for that, and that I didn't have like in me to tour 10 months a year anymore. The band that I founded was called XP8, and then I played with a lot of other bands over the years, always in the industrial goth scene. The biggest one I played with is VMV Nation. I did play with I was a member of Faderhead for many years. I played with Grendel. I played some shows with Combi Christ. I did a lot of. I was always there. I was a DJ as well, and I was playing all the festivals worldwide. But I always consciously decide not to put anything like I never did. I don't know. I tell him a song. Well, because I always found it very cringy because I was seeing like that. I was seeing the way it was done in the metal community, and I was like, that's a little cringe to me, right? There is one song called "The Night of Pan" by XP8, which is an instrumental, which is about the concept of the Night of Pan, but it's an instrumental, and the only thing you hear it's a sample from Oppenheimer saying, "Now I become death, the destroyer of words." That's all you hear about it. Now, apart from that, there's a lot. I always used a lot of subtle ins in the music itself. Back in the early 2000s already, I studied Rhythm Magic by Zeb. Zeb died some years ago, a fantastic percussionist and drummer, and was also a Kabbalist. So he created this system called Rhythm Magic, where you could actually pretty much put gematria into your drum patterns, pretty much. And there's more than that. I'm very bad at explaining it, but
would it induce any trance-like effects listening to that with gematria in the drum patterns?
You know what? I think that more than that, what would another thing that would induce this kind of maybe states, altered states, is the use of hemisync techniques or use of theta waves inside the music. That's another thing that I've done. And I mean, the music I was making, if you listen to it, since it's very it's almost like Depeche Mode on steroids, right? So it's kind of like that, right? But there is, especially in XP8, which was my own project, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of strange patterns put into music. So I would say yes, I did use music in Magic, but never overtly. There is some of my friends that are still going. They do it and they do it pretty well. I'm thinking about Alexis Mincolla and Treat Eat, which is a fantastic industrial metal band, and he is very overt, but I think he's doing it right. But also he started 10 years ago. Pretty much when I was starting to decide to quit. So it maybe if I was if I was his age or being in his scene, maybe I would have done it as well. But now for me it was always about keep it quiet, keep it under the
keep it occult, in other words.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So that's segment 1. Thank you very much, Marco, for that. That was amazing. And now we're going to go to the second segment, which is what we call basically the current events. Basically, we want to hear from you. You are an author, you're a musician, you're a practitioner. We want to ask you, what's your take on your practices or the practices you believe in as of today? Do you think that the practice of the studies and the awareness of Aliester Crowley, is this growing? Is it going to become the next hipster thing, or is it slowly dying out? I'd really love to hear what you have to say about this.
I really think it's dying down. I think we had a moment of expansion that lasted the 2010s, okay? Mm-hmm. And it really peaked during the lockdown years. It was something that was slowly growing up. And again, I mentioned, Alexis and Treat, they really started, at the beginning of the 2010s, and they rode it till, the lockdowns stopped, put everything to a grinding halt for everybody. And those were also the time where you would see a lot of interest in esoteric imagery, in practices. That's the rise of the podcast. Everybody started to do very good podcasts. I'm thinking of Glitch Bottle. I'm thinking of What Magic Is This. I'm thinking, of course, Esoterica, Dr. Justin Sledge. Those were kind of like the tail ends of the 2010s, but still, that's when everything started, right? The pandemic and the lockdowns really gave us all the opportunity to really explore these practices to the nth level, if you want. It also generated a counterpoint, and that is that the rise of witch talk. I don't know if you ever heard about it.
Yeah, God, we hate that witch talk. Jesus Christ.
It's let's say it's not good, and I think that the amount of bad takes, simplifications, the idea of always trying to appeal to the algorithm as opposed to trying to communicate something of value, really create a sort of fatigue to the point that a lot of the people that came into magical practice, they're gone already. I've seen it. Maybe you can say, well, that's your experience because you're bad at it, possibly. But like I said, my community really went from having 300 members to the current 100 and over 100, which is still amazing, right? It's still, I'm grateful to everybody who's been supporting me. Shout out to all of you. You're great. You know that. But the thing is that, and we've been doing a lot of magic. Like we've been doing, I set up like a 7-month practice studying the Arbatel grimoire and conjuring the spirit of the Arbatel. We put together some conjuration of the Goetic spirits. We've been studying the tarot. I've been doing I'm doing right now a course on the Thoth Tarot. So I mean, it's still there, but I feel like we peaked and now it's been dissipating that momentum because a lot of people got very tired by the witch talk influencers. And I'm not going to name names because better not do that. But the reality there is that when to me, it's insane to think that a young person of 20 years of age, clearly all focused on the way they look, can't teach you anything about magic. And but at the same time, I'll be honest, that's who they were bringing people. We were getting people in because those younger people were on TikTok. The problem is that it didn't work out in the end because there was too much like noise to signal ratio possibly, and now I feel like there's a lot of tiredness, like also possibly because a lot of people realize that hey, you're not gonna be able to conjure £1 million in your bank in a month. Like you have to just like oh wait a second, I have to stick to this for years, really?
Yeah.
And I mean, this is something
there's always been that element in the community of people that are trying to do it for some piece of celebrity, or they're doing it for like self-aggrandizement. One of the things that I'd seen, like from out of all the, like if 100 people start doing it, 90% of them drop out in the first year. Yeah. What I found was the biggest repulsion from people was when they did something and it worked. The first time they do something and it's like, holy shit. It's like the first time you fire a gun, you're like, I don't know what I was expecting, but this wasn't it. Yeah. And they go one way or the other, and most of them just go that other way, and they kind of go back to where everything makes sense and is normal, rather than get into this whole other universe where they have to accept the fact that anything can happen at any time. And it's really kind of scary for these teenagers who get into it. They see someone cool on TikTok, they're like, ooh, she's got the hair and the boobs, and she's telling me about this magic thing. And so you get all involved with it, and then suddenly it's like, oh, this is kind of an awesome responsibility. And not really the good kind of awesome.
No, you're right. It really is. And again, I'm an old middle-aged man, right? I wish I was young and beautiful once again, right? So not to knock them off, right? But the reality is, and I'll be honest, there's been so many younger people that came into this and stuck with it, and they have their own practices. It's great. But the overall vibe became very stale very fast, and unfortunately I feel like it's just that there's too much tiredness about the approach, and maybe that's also the nature of social media, right? Whatever you guys are doing is great, but everybody we do on social media, we're slave to this algorithm. Like we have always to find out new ways for whatever we do to pop up here and there. And maybe
click like and subscribe. Make sure you click the thing,
exactly.
Right?
You got to do that.
Yeah. Well, it brings me to ask you the next question. So you're saying it's dying down, but do you think that there's a possibility of yet another resurgence where people like us and other practitioners lead the way? Like, hey guys, enough with the witch talkers. We guys like us who take our practices seriously, guys like Esoterica, guys like Glitch Bottle, they finally say enough is enough. This is the magic. We want to be there for you, show you guys what the real thing is about. You feel that it's possible that this is going to happen in the next 10 years?
I'll tell you, I've seen 10 trends coming and going already, right? I mean, whatever we're experiencing right now, it happened before. It happened at the end of the 90s, when we had Charmed on TV and everybody was there. In Italy, we started having, Italy, as you can imagine, it's very magic friendly as every Catholic country, but we started having, forums dedicated to magic. I mean, that's how I started myself, right? Started talking with other people. I was 20 at the time. So it happened before and it will happen again. So, there was always been trends and whatnot. What I think is that the challenge for people like us, for instance, if we really want to create something of value, we need to find a way to talk to the younger generation without caving in to become, TikTok influencers, because we're not. We cannot do that, right? It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be tricky. It's possible. Everything is possible. Like if you learn how to do it, everything is possible. But I really do believe that the key is to find a way to recapture that younger audience. I don't know how to do it because I'm an old white man, and I'm almost not part of this discussion, that discussion anymore, of that cultural milieu anymore. And maybe I shouldn't be, because I've done my own 20-year-olds thing, right? All things we can do is that maybe to keep producing. I hate to call it content, right? Terrible term, but like producing good videos, producing good podcasts, producing good books. Even if I think books, I don't know how much they're gonna be the way to capture younger audience. What I noticed today, for instance, today I discovered that despite the book is out in 2 weeks, the audiobook is out already. And I had several people texting me, sending me, talking me to Twitter. Twitter is the way where I'm the most available. And it's like, oh, this is great because I really don't like books, but I love audiobooks. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, because I really don't like audiobooks. Like for me, I need to read a book. I need to have something tangible. And, it took me a long time to even accept Kindle and, PDFs and whatnot. Now I do, because, eventually even Luddites like me can get around it. But the point is that, audiobooks, for instance, like I never thought that people would care about them. And you see younger
people. It's a thing now.
It is a thing.
People want to listen to a book while they're doing 6 other things.
Exactly.
I can't do audiobooks myself. I can't listen to someone else read, because I read at my own pace. Like I'll be like skim. Oh, this, and I have to sit and go over this line, and then skim. But when when you have an audiobook, you're going at the author's pace, which is not always going to be the same thing. You can't just skip over the stuff that's just fluff, and there is a lot of fluff.
And I agree with you. And but then again, clearly, we are not the target demographic. And I think that in order to answer Robert's question, right? Can we do it? Yes, I think we can. I think that experience still matters a lot. Both practical experience, in magic, have you done this for real? And just the experience that comes with the age, with time. Learning how to just how to deal with this or that catastrophe that might happen down the line, right? But at the end of the day, we will have to be maybe a bit smarter. And I say this without having any idea of how to do it, right? I mean, this is more like a feeling I have, having seen trends in the last few years on a culture as a whole, right? So yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tricky, but it's possible, and it happened before, so it will happen again. That's the thing.
Would you say
the trick also now is that, especially when you talk about age, it's not just having the information. It's you need to have the wisdom to put all that information together in a structure that can be used, and that's something that it doesn't automatically come when you're older, but you can't do it until you've actually got some experience behind you on it. That's something that you can read someone's book and you're like, I know right away this is a person who read books to write books and hasn't done any of this stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And
I want to ask you, Marco and Wade, both of you, do you feel that this trend, this downturn that we're going through right now because of it being so accessible via Witch Talk, is this not unlike the chaos magic boom of the early 90s? Where next thing you know, all these teenagers were pleasuring themselves in front of sigils because they found out that magic works that way. And then now all these kids got into it. like backdooring the secrets of sex magic without the years of practice, breathwork study. Do you feel that it's similar, or is it completely different from what happened in the 90s? I'd like to ask both of you about that.
Well, I think it's the same, to be fair. There's one problem, one difference, is that now we have social media. Now the interactions are so much faster. And I mean, a lot of those people that were discovering chaos magic, I mean, I was one of them, to be fair, right? Yes, I was much more interested in Crowley and in something more focused on the spiritual growth. But for the longest time, I also wanted to, have fun and know what all this sex magic was about. And then when I discovered what it was about, it's like, okay, well, it's a bit different than what I was expecting. Interesting, but a bit different.
I think what we're seeing now is that 90% being weeded out, because it kind of it ebbs and flows. But now that we're in the information age, I mean, back in the day, I'd be teaching a class in the back of the bookstore, and I was actually working out in the Cone bookstore when The Craft came out. Oh, good God. Yeah. That was beautiful. I wish I could have gotten all that on video. It was an amazing dumpster fire. But when you're doing the classes and you get like 24 people show up for the first class, and you're doing a course of 6 classes, and then by the end you're like, okay, we're down to 4 people who actually get it. So now what we're seeing now is, instead of having, I throw the net out and I pull in 24 people and I gradually weed out the people who can't cut it. Now you're like, okay, I've got an audience of 320 million. Yeah. And I'm trying to go lower, click like and subscribe. Now the only difference now is that the whole world sees it.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone is seeing like, oh, everyone was all into magic, and they're like, oh man, I can't hack this. I'm going to go back to doing the Vandalized blog. And so we're all seeing it, but it's what happened before, and it'll happen again. Yeah, the next time when we have little chips that are broadcasting books into our heads and everything, and then we'll see people like, nah, fuck this, I'm getting my chip out.
I agree, because some people just can't hack the work behind it. Some people tend to forget the fact that magic isn't a quick fix for everything. You got to do the fucking work. You got to do the stillness. You got to do meditations. You got to do the rituals. It's not just going to happen just like that, the way people think it is. I mean, it's not Dungeons and Dragons. There's actually work you got to put behind it.
I mean, I would argue that Dungeons and Dragons require a lot of study if you want to play.
Well, yeah, okay, fine. I take that back.
Well, if you look at it from the character's point of view, in Dungeons and Dragons, what is it that gets you to the next level? Experience points. Yeah, they don't tell you like what went into your character before you started playing the game. I mean, how long was this nerd studying magic before he got up there to throw his magic missile? How long did he have to study for that? And so now we're seeing all these people that they maybe what we need to do is gamify magic, where you can actually you're on the thing and it's like, okay, well, I can do this ritual, I can do this other thing, I can get results with this, I know how to do sigils. Well, all that's going to add XP. All that's going to add your skill points, but really it's just a way of tricking people into developing themselves as a spiritual being.
Well, you know what? You speak of gamifying magic, and like there's a lot of like sigil creations engines out there, right? Some very well done, right? And then I realized that a lot of people were just sitting down, even if the sigil engine website tells you, hey, you have to create the sigil here, but then you have to activate the sigil. Like you have to do something about it, spend some time with it. Depends how you want to do it. You want to do it sexually, you want to do it through exhaustion, you want to do it whatever, right? And then I can tell you, I've seen more and more people say, hey, the sigils don't work. It's like, wait, did you activate them? What? Yeah, you have to activate them. It's like, oh, no, it's too much work. And again, I know that I think we're really sounding like old people right now. That's fine, but that's okay.
Okay, boomer.
I think that's also fine, because like if you don't reiterate, if you don't insist on these points, then you will see that people will not do magic anymore. Like again, the book that I wrote, I'm going to go back to it because of course that's why we even decided to do this thing together. But the book really is about, hey, I know maybe what the lesser banishing ritual of the Pentagram is about. How about you just stop thinking that just cancel, delete all the information you got from YouTube, Witch Talk, whatever, and just like, okay, I understand that maybe there exists an elemental chaos around you, and you can actually go into the middle of it and start to order the chaos. Maybe think of that, the element air are your thoughts, the element earth it's your basic substance, like what you're made of. Fire are your emotions, right? And that's it, right? How can you see these things inside of you, and can you order them, and can you maybe bring them together in the center? That is the pentagram. Okay. Then from there, you don't have to do it once. You have to do it for 6 months. Maybe you have to do it for a year, and then you can say, hey, now I'm starting to get the hang of it. I really insist that, I think a lot of people will hate this book, in fact, because it's like there's no shortcuts. I insist that any step of the way that there's no shortcuts, that you have to just be patient with it. Crowley, of course, speaks, Crowley, the voice of the Book of the Law says that, to be wary of lust of result. But then again, we live in times in society that's all about the lust of result. Like we live in times that everybody is obsessed about getting rich quick, possibly because we live in the worst recession of our lifetime. So that's so everybody needs money. We all do, right? But the point is that if you focus on that, you're never going to get it ever. It doesn't matter. It's interesting that. Can I say this online? Let me think. Let's say for the longest time, there were someone selling courses about how to become a living god. You don't see that.
All right.
Anymore. You don't see that kind of approach anymore. Maybe because everybody realized that, hey, there's no shortcut, especially because the reality of Malkuth, the physical realm we live in. Bit of a simplification, but let's allow that. The reality, the fact that we're all poor right now, you cannot do anything about it but just conjuring Belial, because I noticed that there's Belial up there. He can help, and he can bring a lot of ideas on how to solve your problems, but even to get his attention, well, you need how to get his attention first. And it's not just like, hey, I got all the tools and I read the conjuration from the Goetia once. You need a bit more than that. So, yeah.
And we have our first question, Marco.
I wanted to touch on something real quick there. The idea of becoming a living god is also, there's a lot of expectation built into it of the idea that gods are all powerful. And that kind of goes back to that philosophy of like, well, why does evil exist in the world? Either God wants to do away with it and can't, or he doesn't want to, or he doesn't know. So if you think about it, like, well, in terms of being a living God, maybe that's not all that powerful. Yeah, you can build a house, but you can't command the wall to disappear. You still have to go through a process. We create living beings every day, but every parent knows they don't always do what you want. It doesn't work that way. You create something and it goes into the world, and it's kind of beyond your control 90% of the time. So maybe maybe he's 100% accurate in saying, well, okay, you can become a living god, but that doesn't mean what you think it does.
Agreed. And we have our first question on the show, and it's from Lawrence. Hi, Marco. If interest in joining orders is dwindling, would online magical communities like the one you run successfully be the future alternative? Encouraging others to find their true will and develop their own practice would still work if society became more individualistic and less community-based.
That's an important question right there. I don't think that online will ever substitute face-to-face interactions, right? I do think that we need to lean into the tools that our online connectivity allows us, so that we can more easily find the people we resonate with, okay? One of the biggest problems that I faced in joining orders, that you just join something blind, in the sense that you really don't know who you're going to meet. And even when as I said, I did a coast. I did try to join the OTO in the 90s, and I didn't like the people that were there for many reasons. We're not going to go into that. But then I did. But even when I did, I really didn't know everyone, right? And so online communities might help you in getting to know the person before involving yourself into signing oaths of allegiances, right? Or magical oaths of any kind. You get to know the person. It's like, do I really resonate with this person? But that said, right, I really believe that online is not a substitution, because a lot of magic, what I would say, like real magic, cool magic that really gives you a lot of results, like, bigger group rituals, bigger evocations. Like if you think of the grimoires themselves, right? Like you do need at least 3 people to do that. You need a magician, you need a scribe, you need a recorder, a scribe. Yes, you can do all the things yourself, but kind of difficult, right? I think both David Rankin and Stephen Skinner argued very much about this, and they're right. I tried to do it all by myself, and it did work. But every time I had a scryer or a scribe or both, hey, look at that! Now I can concentrate on directing the conjuration as the magician should. Or maybe from you can actually start change your roles, or you can try the more Masonic style rituals. I mean, I'm a Freemason. I love Freemasonry. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I do love it. And so I realized that without a group, you cannot really do the Masonic style rituals, which the basic of the Golden Dawn or the OTO. I really don't think that virtual lodge rooms will really change it, or maybe they will, but I don't see the technology right now. At the pace the technology evolves, maybe in 5 years' time, we will have full haptic suits. We will go get jacked into the Matrix
style.
Yeah, exactly. And it will be exactly as it is. Now, okay, let's cross that bridge when we get there. Right?
Right. It'd be like the Jedi Council where one of the members isn't present in the room, but he's there by hologram.
Yeah. And then we have another question this time from Lindsay Ross. Is it possible people struggled with balancing the required consistency of building practice within the increasing chaotic circumstances of the external financial world? Could that be a factor in reduced participation? If so, then the ebb could be very temporary, perhaps. I have something to say about that later.
Personally, I think this is an obvious yes, right? I mean, at least for me. We really need to realize that we are facing worldwide the worst recession. I mean, ever, right? And it's not something that just happened because of the lockdowns. It started in 2008. It's been forever. It's been 15 years now. 15 years. It's a generation lost. Here in the UK, like actual wages went down. We're talking about 40%. It's crazy. I mean, I don't even speak of Italy. Italy is a lost cause. Like Italy will never recover unless we get a new deal like World War II, after World War II, right? That kind of economic boom. But that would mean like if we really discover fusion energy and we don't have those overheads anymore. But that said, right, I really don't see. I really think that we're faced with so much stress that of course people struggle with it, and it's okay. It's okay to realize it. It's okay to accept it, but it's also okay to say that unfortunately you do need commitment. You cannot get around it. Like it's in many ways it's kind of am I saying, well, you cannot be a magician in 2023 unless you are like a billionaire? No, I'm not saying that, of course. I'm not a billionaire. I'm not rich, by the way. I'm really not. I'm saying this because there's some strange gossip going around because my last name is Visconti. I do come from a named family, but let's say we didn't win the lottery on that on that part of fate. But the thing is, that's it really. Like you need consistency, and you cannot do without.
I want to throw down on that. An observation I had. I used to frequent, because believe it or not, here in the Philippines, we were not that badly affected by the recession that started in 2008 because we're not a credit-based culture. Here, you can't buy a house if you cannot cash it out. Same thing with the card. Okay. Rarely can you get financing for it the way we could do it in the Western world. So time kind of stopped for me here while it was going to shit after 2008. And what I realized was early, in like 2099, all these occult bookstores, these movements, lodges were all over the place because people had the luxury to do it. 2008 happened. It became a battle of survival. These people could not eat anymore. Hence, between surviving and continuing the practice, they had to choose survival because they were bankrupt. They didn't have any food, no jobs, no nothing. But the thing is, that should have been the ultimate test of how important are these practices to you. Do you use the recession as an excuse to quit? Or do you use it as a challenge to overcome to see how committed you are to your practice? Like, I've been through hell for the past couple of years and I never gave up on magic because I said, if without magic, I'd be dead. So sometimes I think the universe has this way of filtering out who's really into this and who's not. You know, it's like only the worthy will prevail. That's just one thing I personally believe. So anyhow, Mr. Visconti, I also want to give you another round of applause. Thank you for that interesting sharing, because now we are going to be going to the third segment, the most beloved segment of the show, where the people something straight from their Book of Shadows, Grimoires, or big black books. So, Mr. Visconti, what do you have for us today?
All right. So, I think that I mentioned again and again that you cannot do magic unless you bring magic into your body. Magic has to be an embodied practice for me. In this book here, I will read it after from here because so we're going to start with it and then we will go into this little exercise. So this is from chapter 2 and it's called The Foundations of the Magical Pyramid. This is the start of our journey towards Heliopolis, the city of the sun and the cradle of initiation. To reach it, we must travel upwards and build a mystical temple inside ourselves. We can call it a magical pyramid, and we're laying its foundations with this practice. Some of this practice will maybe feel incredibly boring if you're already familiar with it. And I will not pretend it is not if you already have a background in meditation and yoga. But still, without this strong foundation, we cannot hope to reach our goal. So stick with them, always, and you will move on to something that feels more magical in time. So this is a little introduction. And, you know, I've heard a lot of teachers, writers, magicians, especially those who are more focused on the grimoire tradition, says that, for instance, in the grimoires, there's never any reference to breathing. There's never any reference to visualization. And yet, at the same time, they argue very correctly that in order to conduct a successful conjuration, you have to learn how to stand, at times for hours, conjuring the spirit, calling out to the spirit. Well, how do you think you are going to be able to stand, for hours and hours and hours by focusing your attention, your will, your prana, your magical energy, if you haven't done this simple exercises first? And so what I would like to share with you is the idea that you always have to breathe now, consciously, always. By that I mean, observe yourself. Every time you talk, are you breathing? Is there like an intake of oxygen, of air, including oxygen, and is there an outtake? Is it willed? Is it something you're aware of? Or do you just go through the motions of speaking, of going around your life, and is that a completely unconscious or not controlled environment? It's not so simple to get around it immediately, but it's something that in order to really master the magical practice, and by that I mean magic with the K, which is the way that Crowley described these practices, and it really is to be considered the tool of Thelema, in the sense that those are the older practices that will unlock in you the understanding of what Thelema really means and what it's trying to tell you, okay, what it's trying to teach you. And it's you gotta think of magic with the K as a strange mixture of Western traditions, so ceremonial magic, the grimoire tradition, and Eastern traditions, yoga, tantra. Of course, I would like to say that we're talking about simplified versions of yoga and tantra because that's what Crowley was aware of in his time. But still, in time, we have we've kind of made sense of it. So anyway, what I would suggest you to do right now is to just set aside all your phones. If you're watching this live, put everything aside. Try to sit in your chair as still as you can. Okay. And try to keep your spine as erect as possible. You will possibly feel some tension around all this area. You just like shrug it off like this, very simple. And then you just close your eyes and become aware of the intake of breath and of the exhalation. Just this for now. So close your eyes, breathe in. And out. Try to ease yourself into your body. Feel the weight of yourself onto the chair. Do not lean. Do not lean forward either. Just try to be straight. This is simple. The next step is to turn this exercise, this breathing exercise, into what we call a battery. A battery is inhaling for a set amount of time that you can count in your head, then hold another for a set amount of time, then breathe out, and then hold. The battery that I'm suggesting for starters, it's a simple one. You're going to inhale for 4 seconds, and you're just going to count them in your head. And you're going to hold for 4 seconds, and exhale for 4, and hold for 2. So, like this. Hold. Exhale. Hold. One next thing that you can do is that as you hold the breath, you press with your tongue the top of your palate. I'm going to show you. Very nice to see it. But let's try it again. But this time, press the tongue to the top of your palate. So once again, be relaxed, be aware, be present in this moment. And breathe in. Hold with the tongue. Out. And hold once again. Now, the idea is that you want to keep doing this at first until the point that you can stay with this practice for at least 10 minutes. And this can be your starting practice with magic. Nothing else is needed really at this stage. This is the cornerstone, if we want to use like a Masonic symbology and terminology, for the building of your inner temple, your magical pyramid. There's a lot that can be added to this practice. If you study pranayama, and pranayama is the technical name of this practice, literally comes from the Sanskrit. It means control of breath. Yama, control, breath, prana. Prana can also mean energy. It can mean many different things. Sanskrit is a very beautiful and complex language that I always butcher, so apologies for that. But the idea is that by doing this, you start to position yourself at the center of your universe. In Telema, we say that every man and every woman is a star. That means that every man and every woman and every intersexed individual, he is the center of their own universe. It is the star at the center of their own universe. But in order to really identify ourselves with the star, in order to transmit our consciousness into that more exalted state, we need to rise our consciousness to that point. Breathing is one of the keys to do that, and it is, for me, the most important one. Breathing consciously always it's the way, it's a way of constantly doing your will, or at least aspiring to do your will, because you try to always live not a reactive existence, but an active resistance, something existence, something where you constantly have control over. And that's it. For the rest, buy my book.
Yeah, of course, we're going to gladly do that. So, thank you very much, Mr. Visconti, once again for that. That was epic. The fans love it. I love it. It was amazing. We're going to be putting that up on our Instagram page and how we're going to be doing that. So, before we conclude the show, you want to show us the book? Where can we buy it, and where can we learn more about it?
This is it. It's called the Aliester Crowley Manual, Thelemic Magic for Modern Times. There's a beautiful many-boobed Baphomet on top, so you cannot miss it. This is available for pre-order everywhere, pretty much everywhere you can buy books and sells magical books, you'll find it. Amazon is your easiest way, but if you don't want to give more money to Jeff Bezos, which maybe is a good idea, you can find it on your local bookstore. I know here in the UK, you have liberal.com that sells it, Threadwells London.com that sells it, and globaltribe.org.uk sells it. That the last one might be wrong, the URL, but you can find it on my socials. I link it everywhere. On my website, if you go there, there's some links. You can buy from Barnes and Nobles. You can buy everywhere. The audiobook, as we were saying before, it's already available. Like you can go on Amazon Audible and get the book. The good thing is that, as you can see, there's a lot of images, and there's a lot of images, of course.
Is it dictated by you, the audiobook?
No, it is dictated by a professional voice actor. I had the options of doing it, but I turned it down because I have an accent, as you all can hear. And
but that makes it more appealing. I mean, go on. It's like that makes it more fun.
I think that, possibly yes. But the reality there is that I really wanted, the book to be as universal as possible. Right. I do get from time to time on my YouTube live streams, which I do pretty much every other week or something like that. I do get people say, "Hey, can you turn on the captions?" Which I understand. I mean, I do definitely have an accent, and so they gave me the choice. So you want to do it yourself, or do you want us to get us a voice actor? And we found a fantastic voice actor, which just his name is Robbie. I think it's Robbie Stevens, but I might not remember the name correctly. He's a great guy. He did a lot of stuff. He read it beautifully. But what I want to say, with the audiobook, you can get the PDF with all the tables as well.
Okay, so it comes with the audiobook.
Sorry?
The PDF comes with the audiobook.
Yeah. If you buy it on Audible, you will also get, for instance, I have all these things in the book that tells you how to, right? And a PDF with all of this, which all the illustrations were done by Mars Neumann, which you will know as adventuresofamagus.com.
Yeah, I love his work. We're trying to get him on the show next. He's been talking to me, and I love his work. The Nox Manual, really great stuff.
He is great. He is fantastic. And he's been studying with me for the last few years, and he's done a fantastic job here. So if you get the audiobook, you will also get all of Mars's diagrams and illustrations, which really go with the book. I mean, I structured this in the sense that when I teach the pentagrams or the hexagrams, there's a visual representation of how to do it, right? So
one last question, Mr. Visconti. Is there another book coming, like an advanced version, or do you think that that's a couple of years in the making still?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I don't consider myself a writer. Maybe not yet. We'll see in time. I have ideas. I have ideas on how to expand this. Like I said, I would like to go and describe more in detail the rituals of Thelema, like having. I could do a book alone on the Star Ruby or the Star Sapphire or the Liber Reguli. I could do a book alone on Liber Samek, which is what I was discussing the other day with Dr. Justin Sledge on his channel. Maybe we will see. What I'm doing right now, though, is I just started this course on the Thought Tarot, but it's called Thought Tarot Magic because it's not so much about teaching you how to read the cards, but it's more like I put together 22 path workings that will guide people into the cards to have visualization, insights of the card. And of course, there's a bit of history of the tarot. There's a bit of how to read, like a quick how to read. But the course really is running for the next 6 months, and maybe something will come out of it in book form, right? Because again, with Mars, we've been creating all sorts of like a workbook and diagrams. So maybe something will come as a book form there. We shall see.
So thank you, Mr. Visconti. It was such an honor. And Wade, do you have anything you want to say to Mr. Visconti before we wrap up the show?
No, this was a great show. I think we covered all the bases, and
thank you so much for having me. This has been really, really, really fun. And
so we're going to send you back to the waiting room. We're going to wrap up the show tonight, but don't leave yet. We're just going to say our goodbyes privately. So this is the end of the show. Good night, everyone. See you next week. We have a returning guest who will be discussing something cool in times of Valentine's Day. Wait for the official announcement tomorrow. So this is Rob, Ruben, and Wade signing off.